Today's episode will be with the amazing bass player Steve King. The recording was live, and unfortunately I had trouble with the microphone, my microphone. So Steve's chat is really good, but mine is rather distant. So if you can put up with that, and also there's no visuals on this for people watching YouTube, because I didn't really think it was that interesting, because I just recorded it off an iPad, and the sound wasn't very good on that either. So interesting challenge. So yeah, details are obviously all on the show notes about Steve. Check out some of his stuff. He's got some things on Instagram and Twitter and whatever. But he's a phenomenal player, and you'll hear obviously he's sort of quizzing him on how he's such a good sight reader and good improviser. So yeah, so check out the show notes, and we'll get on with the show. Today, I'm talking to Steve King. Hi.
Hi, Vic. How are you doing? It's
Good.
It's been a very long time, hasn't it?
It has been a ridiculously long time. I'm just trying to think. I don't know, 10 years?
And the rest, I would say. Yeah, upwards of 10, I would say.
Yeah. So, first question is, what do you do?
What do I do? Once upon a time, I'm a bass player. Basically I do whatever I need to do to earn money. No, I'm still playing bass increasingly regularly again post COVID, which is always good. Doing a fair bit of singing and things as well. Other than that, it's we'll get onto the teaching side of things later, but I'm not a teacher at all by any stretch of the imagination. So in terms of that, it's I have a day job. I do a lot of driving. I'm a professional driver. So between that and the music, I scrape together a living.
So how, when you must have studied bass. Was it bass you started with?
No, not at all. No, I started on piano originally.
Oh. What age?
Very early. Very early. It's cutting a long story short. Basically, when I was about 3-4 years old, my grandfather owned a piano. Mm-hmm. So they were up at his house, and like the parents were in the kitchen, and they heard someone just tapping out Three Blind Mice on the piano. Mm-hmm. Just kind of Three Blind Mice, and they kind of looked around and said, "Well, who's doing that?" Because my granddad was in the room with them, and it turned out it was me. Mm-hmm. So they took an interest in that, and kind of when I started school, there was a lady called Mrs. Layton, I think her name was, obviously going back some time now, but I believe her name was Mrs. Layton. She used to come in and do sort of the group music things for the infant school. And basically she wrote a thing saying, well, hang on a minute, this kid's a bit special in the nicest way, so we should maybe pursue this. And from there I kind of went to take more formal piano lessons from a lovely lady, Karen Wildy, who is Maidstone based, still going around. I think she's still doing it, I think. But I was one of her first pupils so she was like fresh out of college, and then there was me at the age of probably 6 by that point. And basically she took me through piano and kind of converted the initial signs of there being something into kind of like this is how you this is how you read music, and basically taught me to walk and run, basically.
Yeah, cool. So did you stuck with piano for quite some time, or?
Yeah, I mean, I did piano all the way through my school years.
Right.
So I got up to grade 7.
Yeah.
So did the formal gradings up to grade 7. By the time I got to the end of that, I discovered the bass,
Right.
and that was the thing that really kind of took me on to the next level.
Yeah.
So it took. I can still bash out on piano occasionally if I get to it. Then I mean my hands don't do what my brain want them to,
Right.
in terms of the piano anymore. But it's I can sit, and if I sit there for a little while, on the rare occasions that I do, I can still sort of play some music.
Right.
And
So did you find the bass was easy to pick up because of the piano? Does everything made sense, sort of thing?
Yes, to a certain extent. I took the bass up out of necessity, in a way. I had started a group with some schoolmates. I'd sort of joined with them.
Yeah.
That would have been around about age 14. And I started playing piano, and then we had another keyboard player. So between us, we kind of did the bass parts, and then there were like 2 guitarists. And eventually, it was kind of like, maybe I should try bass and see if that's something that will work for me. And it turned out to be a very good decision.
Yeah. So I can see there's a lot of stuff that you must have taken on board really straight away, with obviously the fact you could read.
Yeah, actually, interesting. It was the bass that really started me with reading, because I always used to struggle terribly with sight reading on piano.
Really?
Yeah, and the thing with playing piano is obviously you've got 2 lines of music, and you've got up to 10 notes going at once. Sometimes, if you've got these big chords that are all written out on classical piano, you've got this. You've got the big sort of handfuls of chords and things, and you're reading that.
Yeah.
And like even professional players, they kind of look at it and go, hang on a sec, what's that?
Yeah.
So for me as a student, I always struggled terribly with sight reading that. But all of a sudden, I got onto bass, and bass is, hang on, I've only got 1 note, and it's only 1 clef and 1 line, and all of a sudden I can follow this.
Yeah.
So it was a big big leap forwards, really, as far as that.
Yeah, I suppose because your sight reading was always something that I just thought, right. But that really makes sense with that reading, and it's that sort of thing of if you've been used to something that's as complex as you say as trying to sight read for piano. Okay, fair enough. That note there is going to be there on the piano. It's not going to move around.
Yeah.
Like that. But the complexity that, as you say, all the reading 2 clefs, and sometimes there's multiple notes and stuff like that. As soon as you get out of that, you've got that ability to read rhythms and everything, because that was there for reading.
Exactly. Yeah. You learn. You learn the basics, and
and you're reading in the bass clef as well, so that's not a problem.
Yeah.
So that's cool. So with that then, did you just get involved in, because you used to play, was it the Jazz Youth Orchestra?
The Kent Youth Jazz Orchestra, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I started that age 16, and officially left it at 26. But in practical terms, I was a regular guest.
Yeah.
So when they had the bass players that weren't quite so weren't able to make gigs or whatever, I was getting the call.
Yeah.
So I think I did my last one when I turned 40.
Right,
it was
yeah.
Obviously I was billed as a guest at that point, but it was but
yeah. And that must have done you playing the world of good, really.
Yeah, and one of the things I don't know how much at the time, it was run by a chap called Jeff Miller, trumpet player.
Yeah.
And Jeff is a major influence insofar as he is the guy that kind of taught you about practical geography of reading a piece of music, because it wasn't starting in the top left-hand corner and finishing at the bottom of the page. He would kind of go, okay, we're going to do this song, and we're just going to groove around in B flat for a while, and then I'll count you all into the top, and then we'll play to the top, and we'll go through to sort of bar 61, then we'll jump off to a solo section, and we'll just solo in B flat for a while, and then I'll cue you into 101, and then 101 we'll go through and we'll do that, and then we'll go back for more solos, and then cue 101 again, then we'll do the sign and the coda, and maybe I'll do a groove on the way out. And it was that sort of thing that really kind of, it's the thinking on your feet side of things that's really kind of made me the musician I am today.
That's brilliant.
Really having to kind of do that, and there was a lot of people that have come through that kind of learn the not the wing it approach really, but as I said, the thinking on your feet approach, and instead of just literally just reading it parrot fashion, it's kind of like, okay, we're going to take this piece of music and we're going to read some of it, but we're going to do something interesting with it in the middle, and then we're going to...
That's amazing, because that makes absolute sense, really. And also as a skill, not just from a practical point of view of what you can do with a piece of music, but as a skill, like you're saying, that ability to, be in the reading zone and then not being in the reading
have your
zone.
ears open at the same time.
Exactly. And that's an amazing.
And it was. I mean, it extended to like the horn set. I mean, basically, especially when I was doing it, the Kent Youth Jazz Orchestra was very much. It was like a funk band with a very large horn section. So they'd play the arrangements, and then we go off and do a solo section, and someone's soloing away. And during the middle of the solos, Jeff would kind of sing a riff to the saxes or something like that. And he would like sing it or sort of just play it quietly down his trumpet. And they're sitting there going, "This is hang on, okay, that's how that goes." And they're all jumping in on the riff that he's just given them.
Right.
So it's ear training for the horn section as well.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
So yeah, that really is a significant part of what I have become.
That's awesome. I mean, it's primarily because it's one of the problems I have with a lot of standard tuition is that it's become incredibly formulaic. Especially for like contemporary instruments, well, particularly the guitar. It's becoming more and more as if it's a classical instrument. That people are just going off and learning the solo by so-and-so, the piece by Joe Satriani or whatever.
Yeah.
Which, of course, when I was sort of growing up, you could never know a piece exactly because you had to work it out off a record.
Yes.
So you slowed the recording down, and you ended up that bit where it had become a dirge already. Unfortunately, that note that you wanted was at the same time that somebody had hit the tom-toms, and it was a guess. But of course, similarly, you had to make your own assumptions about what was going on. So you really had to use your ear. But of course, now we've got this thing where you get a lot of very technical players, but it's almost as if, like, the ear bit, I'm not sure what's going on there, whether there's any sort of reflection about who they are in a piece of music. I mean, this is something that's been said by quite a few people I've spoken to. But doing stuff that way, where you've got to, as you say, you're changing that focus of what you're doing from the reading to using your ear, and then just actually feeling where you are in a piece of music. There's an improvisation thing, and you've got to make something of the groove in B flat.
Yeah.
You're sitting on something. I think it's amazing. It's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's as I said, it's really I think what you're saying is absolutely too much of music tuition is kind of parrot fashion.
It is.
And even at an advanced level, like university level, degree level, there's kind of like, oh yeah, this is how Michael Brecker played around these changes on these modes and this solo.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you listen there, he goes outside for a minute, then he comes back, and I'm sitting there going, well, I don't really understand that, because I've just always, the only scale I have is the 12-note one.
Yes.
The chromatic scale,
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The thing is that you get within education the easy option, which is, can you put that in a lesson plan?
Yes.
Right.
Does it tick a box?
Exactly. And if you can quantify something that's in your syllabus or whatever, that unfortunately then straitjackets things, and that's not really how arts operate. Well, in my opinion, they don't. Because it's that sort of thing where if you've got a bunch of people in a room, where are they in the scheme of things? You might have thought, well, we're doing this, but where do these people fit into it? And that's something I find. I do examine, and I always a little bit. I find that quite tricky, when you sort of, because part of me is thinking, well, okay, you've got the musicality part of it, and you've got to find that within the marking structure.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, there was. I mean, again, going back to the ABRSM things I was getting, there was, several times in the earlier grades, it was that one of the pieces would get like a lower mark, and the comment would read something along the lines of great expression and fluidity, however technically not accurate.
Yeah. I think some of that has changed. Well, certainly for some of the examination boards, where they start to mark it on the artistic interpretation of something. But even so, like you're saying, in an earlier grade, sometimes it can be assumed that somebody's got it wrong, when actually they're musically much more proficient than there's expected of them at
that level. Yeah.
At that level,
yeah.
Right? And I certainly had that, because I did classical guitar, and my guitar teacher used to go up the wall with some of the remarks that were made, because it was a bit like, well, they're marking you for the fact that you didn't play that as and it's a solo piece. It's not like you're playing as an ensemble, and yet it was all about that line was expressed in a particular way, but they're marking you because you didn't quite make that a series of crotchets or whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway,
that part wasn't quite legato enough, or something,
Yeah, I know. So I'm really fascinated by that. So you must know I would say that by the time you started playing bass, that was something that you were saying that you could do really well.
I knew I was good at music. I think bass was the thing that kind of pushed me into saying, like, this is the thing I could do.
Yeah.
This is the thing I could do as a living.
Yeah. Because I'm always fascinated by that, when people suddenly get to that realisation that that's the thing. And sometimes that's sort of weird, that it takes people a while to spot that, and sometimes they spot it before other people spot it. So it's a very interesting, like the awareness of what it is that you've got, how you relate that to that instrument. And I don't know you, but
go on.
But I was going to say, I think every musician always thinks, well, shit, I could be better than this, but because you're always viewing and finding what you're doing to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to add at the point as well that my school careers advisor and things, talking about doing it as a job, less than useful, if I'm entirely honest. I mean, the school I went to was very sort of science and humanities based school. didn't have an awful lot of attention to the arts, to the point that I actually had to go to a different school to do the A-level music.
Right.
So I did the GCSE music, and there was a thing, the group, but then going into sixth form, they basically said to us at the end of the 5th year, if there's 6 people that want to do A-level music, we'll run the course. And I think they got 8 in the year group that wanted to run the course, and came back and said, no, sorry, we're not going to run that. So what we can do is we can ship you off to another school. So you'll do, of the 3 A levels you were doing, you'll do 2 of them here, and then for the third, for the music A level, we'll bus you off to another school. Right. So that's what me and 4 others ended up doing. Right. So we ended up jumping in a taxi 3 times a week and going off to music lessons at a completely different school.
Right. It's interesting. Mind you, that's pretty cool though, that you can bugger off to another school.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, where were you on this day? I was at the other school. Of course I was. Honest, governor. Yeah.
Cool. So, when did you? Okay, you were doing the stuff with the Kent Youth Jazz. What about when you start getting with other people?
I was 16. And again, it was a school thing. In Victor Grammar, down in Maidstone, the school, they were doing a production of Grease.
Oh, cool.
And they were looking for a bass player and a guitarist to make up the band. And I got asked by my music teacher, Vanessa Money, by the way.
Oh, right.
Definitely. Vanessa Money and Heather Gallagher were the 2 music schools, two music teachers at my main school. Yeah. So they definitely get a large amount of credit to giving me a push. Vanessa, or Mrs. Money as she was then, she got the call saying, we're looking for a bass player, do you know anybody? And she said, Steve, do you want to go and give this a crack? And it's like, yeah, okay, whatever, something to do. And I basically went over to Invicta Grammar and just read through the Grease, basically read through the pad and did it. It was the first time I met John Vincent as well. John Vincent was on drums, and me on bass. I can't remember the keyboard player's name. It was Nick someone, and my schoolmate Dan Langmaid. He was the guitarist, so we both went across to do the thing, and it turned out that was my first paid gig.
Right. That's
so
good.
Yeah, so for the if I remember for the week's run and whatever, I got an entire £100.
That's good.
At the age of 16, so I was well happy with that, and that was the
big incentive, isn't it?
Yeah, the big catalyst. Yeah. It's kind of like, oh, hang on, I can make money at this.
Yeah.
And obviously from there, the odd sideline used to come up from the jazz orchestra, and I got sort of picked up by other musicians in the area that basically sort of said, it's a small jazz gig, but do you want to come and play bass on this? Yeah. And through one of them, I met John Peel,
right?
One of your podcast alumni.
Yeah.
Through them I met John Peel, and then John, in his case, he got me. I mean, he suggested, like, do you want to come along and do? He was running the Medway Big Band.
Yeah, all right.
At the time, the Medway Big Band being like the amateur, just the local amateur big band in the area. And so he got me in on that. Yeah. And really, that was the case of just that was the gaining of experience.
Yeah. And the contacts,
and the contact, and I mean there was lots of other things, like I did have a few guitar lessons when I was at school with a guy called Mark Sanderson. And I used to follow Mark had a pub band as well, 3-piece pub band, called Small But Perfectly Formed, I think it was called. It was, but again, this is early 90s now.
Yeah.
And every so often, Mick, their bass player, had a clashing gig. So he sort of said, do you want to come and do this gig in a pub? And it's like, yeah, sure, of course I will. So I used to go along and do some of those, and that put me in with the drummer Andy James,
Right.
who was the drummer in that particular thing. And then I did some jazz gigs with him, like through university. And yeah, it really, really between that and music, between that and the university, and just generally meeting people.
Yeah.
And it was the networking thing that kind of built up over time.
Yeah. Obviously, yeah, I can see that the thing about your ability to read is really, when you think about how you can position yourself as a musician, what it is that makes you stand apart from other people. And for different people it would be different things. But for the fact that you could, your first paid gig is one where you can just go and read the score and type of thing.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. That it's not okay. You've got the pub gigs and stuff, but it's like you're coming in from 180 degrees from a lot of players who are meeting. It's more like a horn player's sort of entry into the market.
A little bit, I suppose. Yeah.
Because it's that sort of ability to play, with a horn section, and you're making your contacts that way, and then you find yourself in a rock band type of thing.
Yeah.
Which is very different from a lot of other bass players. Certainly, a lot of other guitarists, definitely, but certainly there's obviously maybe a couple of other people I can think. They did the army thing and came in that way. But yeah, I find that really fascinating, because obviously you haven't really said much about this ability that you've got, because it is fantastic. Because you've also got that ability to improvise and scats, and which you got the music reading, and and you got that, which seems to be almost polar opposites.
Maybe they are polar opposite. I will say that the reading obviously did come quite late, because I'd been playing piano for many years before I started playing bass.
Yeah.
And then,
but you had a good grounding in that.
I did have I did have a good good grounding in that, and then that was. But obviously the two kind of meet in the middle. Yeah. But the the musicality side of so it did come later, but I've always considered it quite important on so many levels. One of which is just a time saver. Yeah. Because it's kind of like, can you go and learn these 20 charts by tomorrow? I'd learn these 20 songs by tomorrow. Yeah. And it's kind of like, well, most people would probably shy away from that. Whereas I can sit there with a set of headphones and scribble out a crib part, and then it just goes on the stand and there you go, read it.
Yeah. That's amazing.
So it's used, it's an acquired skill, but a useful one, definitely.
Yeah, and it means basically you can just do anything, can't you? Because as long as you've got a score, you can play that score. So
pretty much, yeah. That's right. Within reason. I mean, if it's absolute fly shit, then you'd have to kind of hang on, might need to look at this a bit more.
Yeah, but again, there'd be a lot of other people in the same boat. If it's that complex, you'd have to.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's cool. So that stuff with your ability to sort of improvise, and was that something that? Where did that come in the mix? Because you obviously said that you had the ability. If you were like 3 or 4 and you're playing 3 blind mice on the piano at that age, and you got that ability to hear something and find it. I know that's a long way back, but
Yeah.
because that was my first thing about music, was there was a piano, and I could hear a tune on the radio, and it was that. But
Yeah.
a complex tune that I could find.
Yeah.
And of course you don't think anything of it, do you?
No, absolutely not. No, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
just one of those things you do. But in retrospect, that was quite a skill.
Yeah, and if anything, that kind of almost hindered the reading side of thing a little bit.
Yes.
Because, like, Karen, bless her, she had a devil of a job, like, trying to get me to sit there and read the paper, like, read the music of the paper, especially when I was...
If you can hear it, then it's...
That's it. I mean, it's I don't have an absolute photographic memory or whatever, audiographic or whatever you want to call it, but I sort of said, could you play that bit for me?
Yeah.
I'm struggling with this part, can you play that? And she'd sort of sit there and play it, and that was it. I've got it then.
Yeah.
So I'm not actually reading what's on the piece of paper, but I know that particular segment goes like that because that's what she's played.
Yes. And that's it, because that's one of the things I've always... There is that conflict, isn't there? When you get somebody who's got a really amazing... there's a couple of people that I know that fall into this bracket. There's a particular guitar player. His ear is so good, he doesn't need anything. He can't even really read tab or anything. He just doesn't need it. And that's his drawback, on the guitar, because he doesn't need it. You can just hear it and play the thing. So that is quite a difficult thing to do. To develop reading when you don't really need to do it, because your ear and your musical memory of a melody as such. And also there's a logic to most melodies, isn't there, that you know that's coming next. Chances are it's going to be this. There's some there can be some educated prediction going on as well. Like we do with any form of language. I was talking to somebody the other day about this thing about stammering. So you don't hear an awful lot of that anymore, but if you go back a little bit in time, there were a lot of people who would stutter so badly that you could get to the end of the sentence before them.
Yeah.
And you were always trying to finish their sentence for them.
Yeah.
And that's the point, isn't it? That any form of language, music, obviously, falls into this. You're already predicting ahead to and everybody does it. It's just that people are not aware that that's what they do. So interesting. Okay, so you didn't quite answer the thing about that sort of jazz thing of the singing the solo as you're playing. Because I do that, but you dance up over that.
That's I think it's kind of a transference to the same thing, because I've always been able to hear the tune in my head and play it. Yeah. So in theory, you should be able to reverse that and sing what you're playing.
Yeah, but you could do it over the changes as well. That always impressed me.
Sometimes,
But you get the changes. I tend to take the easy guitarist's route out, which is we're sitting in a groove, and I don't have to worry too much about the key changes. But so when did you realise that? Was that just something that you sort of did?
Yeah, it was something I did messing around. I mean, it comes from the George Benson thing, obviously.
Yes.
Listening to like some of the George Benson stuff. Yeah.
But he tends to sit, when he does that, he tends to sit in a standard.
Yeah, it's something that Mark used to do sometimes as well. Mark Sanderson, he used to, like, when he used to do his jazz gigs and things. Yeah. He used to do the same kind of thing, like especially if he was doing a George Benson number, he'd sing his solo. Yeah. So there's a little bit of copycatting in a way, really, because it's kind of like I think I can probably do that.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, I can. It's
Yes, but a lot of those Benson solos, so we're going to get a bit anarchic when he does a lot of that scat singing. That does tend to be over like
a 2/5 sort of thing.
Yeah, just some sort of vamp in it, like a Dorian thing, like the ghetto or whatever.
Yeah.
But of course, if you hear the early Benson stuff, when he's playing with, is it Jack McDuff? The organ player.
No,
he was like, I don't know, he's 14 or something.
Yeah.
He's like the monster jazz player.
Yeah.
But there's also a recording of him with Quincy Jones's orchestra where they're playing for Frank Sinatra.
Yes, I've seen that one. Yeah.
Yeah, and Benson's solos on that is like cracky.
Yes.
And he's all over, all over the changes and stuff. It's incredible.
Yeah. The other one to hear about that. Have you heard Glenn Campbell when he gets going?
Yes.
I think it was Glenn.
It was Glenn Campbell.
He did like a BBC thing. I think.
Yeah.
He did a BBC thing, and he took Back Home Again in Indiana at about 400 beats a minute, and then he's just let rip on this solo, and like you kind of think, oh, he's just a sort of country singer / crooner, and all of a sudden he lets rip on this guitar solo.
Well, it's funny because there are two singers like that. Glenn Campbell, because my sister really loved Glenn Campbell's stuff, and he had that BBC. Well, I would say BBC. It could have been an American program, but that the BBC were airing, and I think he used to play one sort of guitar, sort of country picking guitar thing on every program. And of course, I only ever knew him as a singer, but as soon as I saw him play guitar, it was like, oh my God, this is incredible.
Yeah.
Because again, I hadn't really heard any of that sort of country style guitar, right? But because he'd been such a guitar player for all sorts of people, Beach Boys.
Yeah. The other name that comes out of the blue for that is Sacha Distel.
I was just going to say,
yeah.
Now, and he's more of a jazzer, anyway, isn't
he? Yeah, I think, yeah.
Yeah, he was a great player, brilliant player. And it's strange, isn't it? That, so you've got George Benson, Sacha Distel, and
Glenn Campbell,
Campbell, all made a name for themselves as singers when really they were
guitar
players. So that's, and of course you could add to that. Okay, it's not guitar, but Nat King Cole.
Yes, as a pianist. Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, he was. I was lucky to go on one of Barney Kessel's guitar master classes back in. Oh God, I was about 18 or 17 actually, and he was talking about great jazz musicians that you should really listen to, and Nat King Cole was one that he said that his sense of playing, his style, touch, and voicing and stuff, as a pianist, was amongst the top 5 in his opinion, which I thought was amazing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it really is. It's the grounding of being a musician as opposed to quotes just a singer.
Or just a piano player.
Or just a piano player, exactly. Yeah.
So that sort of brings really what's interesting about all of this is that thing about the thing that makes you. So this is sort of going through as a bit of a thread of really what we're talking about. Is what sets you apart from other players. Whether that's the fact that you're George Benson, you've got a great voice, and you could also play guitar, type of thing. Because I think again that comes back to this thing about identity, musical identity. Not just the technique and all that, all the chops. You know what I mean? It's that stuff about what it is that the impression that you give as a musician. Over and above the fact that you're just playing. That is something, there's no answer to this, it's just something I'm sort of pondering. I think for a lot of players, it's difficult to formulate what it is I'm trying to get at here. you go through a lot of time just trying to do the thing, trying to play this song. Spend a lot of time trying to play as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is, whatever technique you're trying to do. And then you get to that sort of for a lot of people, and this is certainly me, you get to the thing when you feel like you've hit a wall. And then suddenly you think, what the hell am I doing this? Because in actual fact, it's not really that. It's the thing that really gives me that. And sometimes it's like you listen back to something you did a long time ago and you think, oh my God, that's really a lot better than I thought it was. And you can hear some sort of quality in it that you never realised was there.
Yeah, I've got a similar thing because, again, going back to Jeff Miller, he used to run a small band called TNT. And it was Jeff and a guy called Mike Austin, sax player, out front. And then the rhythm section was me, Jeff's son Lee on drums, Martin James on keyboards, and a guy called Nick Skates on guitar. And sometimes we had Frank Dawkins come and join us as well on guitar. Which was an experience because Frank played with like Sister Sledge and so on for a long time. I mean, he's it's kind of a real sort of. He was a great rhythm guitarist, He was, and he's another one. Listening to him taught me a great deal about sort of being tasteful, really.
Yes.
Being tasteful and unobtrusive, really, because we did CD. Again, back in the late 90s, probably about 97, 98, something along there, and it fell out of my CD collection the other day because I still had a copy of it, and I listened to it and I went, oh, okay, maybe that's not as terrible as I thought it was. But again, listening to some of the stuff that Frank was doing on that was, it was kind of very, very subtle backgroundy stuff, and it's when you go back to it, you kind of realise, oh, hang on, that rubbed off on me quite a lot.
Yes. It's funny, funny this. I found a cassette of the last, so that dates it, of the last gig that I did with this band called Bravura, which was like a reggae band. And it was the first, like a reggae fusion sort of thing. And it was the first... second band that I was in that was really had something, had a style, gigged a lot, and we had all the sort of performance aspect, sorted the set out and what we looked like and all the rest. And the bass player, there were three out of the four members of the band. Three of us were singers.
Right.
So we had 3-part harmonies, and we all wrote. So it was like a machine,
Yeah.
But it was Brian, the bass player, who really inspired a lot of my ability to write, because he came at things in a very different sort of way. When I listen back to his playing, it was. He was a dyslexic, very eccentric sort of character, but it had this extraordinary lyrical quality to everything he did. Whether it was just a standard bass line because he was singing, but it had that, as you say, it was incredibly tasteful. And it's only in reflection, listening back to it, you think, my God, it was fantastic. The sound, everything about it. His playing, his lyrics, and his way he could sing, put things across. So I don't think I was appreciated that enough at the time.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean there. Yeah,
it's only like in reflection you think, and that had a real effect on how I did things later. Like you're saying about how somebody's like rhythm guitar playing could make you think, right, okay, it doesn't need to be any more than that. And something it's true obviously with every instrument.
Yeah.
What is it that song requires? Well,
bass more than most. I mean, there's so much that so much on bass that you don't really get out of first gear.
Yeah,
but it's what's needed
exactly
for the gig. It's what's needed for the gig, what's needed for that song.
Yeah, totally. And again, that's another musical decision that is something that's really difficult to put your finger on. If you try to teach, going back to this idea of teaching, how do you teach that? Economy.
Yeah. Play fewer notes.
Yeah.
Now play more notes. Fewer.
You can't, can you? Unless you sort of say, well, that line you got there, take some notes out and see what happens. And does it sound worse? No, it doesn't. Okay, well, you can still take some more notes out. It's that sort of same time. Just play less and see. Does it fall apart at that point? No. Okay, so you can still take more out. And that again, because you can't until you feel what's going on in a piece of music, and it's also dependent on what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think about what are the sort of high points of what you've been doing musically over the last few years? Well, ignore the COVID stuff.
Yeah, ignore the COVID stuff.
But what have you done that you've really felt like, God, that was really cool?
Yeah. Actually, something came up on my Facebook today. 3 years ago today, I was on top of a mountain in Switzerland, performing a load of James Bond music for the 50th anniversary of On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Oh wow! What a gig!
That was quite a gig. Yeah, absolutely. It's a band that's I've been doing for 8-9 years now.
Yeah.
Probably, right? Yeah, it's about 8-9 years ago. It's a show called Cue the Music.
Right.
And it is basically a tribute to the music of James Bond.
Right.
So it goes into the theatres, and we have a Bond girl usually comparing the show. Basically we run through the themes, and then we do a couple of extra little items like we play some of the chase music.
Oh, cool.
From some of the films and so on, and
that's a big band.
It's a 13-piece normally.
Oh, okay.
The normal size is 13. We've got one. It's actually our grand finale, unfortunately, thanks to COVID. We're doing like a grand finale gig in the West End, and that's going to have like a 30-piece band on stage. That's going to be that's quite something,
Yeah.
But 3 years ago, the 13-piece band was up on top of the Schildhorn in Switzerland, which was known as Piz Gloria in the movie, I believe.
Right.
Playing a load of Bond music at 10,000 feet.
That sounds awesome. Brilliant. So what else have you got? Because you were saying that things are beginning to sort of come back now.
Yeah. Other things. I'm just gigging around, really. It's always been the way. I've always been. I'm increasingly getting regular work, but I've always done a lot of depth work as well.
Yeah.
For exactly that kind of reason, that I can just kind of slot in, and I've scribbled some charts out or put them on the iPad, and I can do it pretty much straight off, so they don't need to necessarily worry about who's providing the dull thuds at the back, But no, my main gig is one of my main gigs. I've got a guy called Paul Da Vinci who was in the Rubettes in the 70s.
Oh wow! That's cool.
Yeah, so he's the one that did all the high falsetto vocal stuff on Sugar Baby Love.
Right.
And that sort of thing. But he's still going strong, and I've in the last couple of years I've started working with him as part of his band, sort of doing 60s, 70s cover music, and of course Sugar Baby Love, and still listening to his falsetto, because if I get to his age and I can hit the notes he can.
That sounds absolutely astonishing.
Then it is. It's quite a thing, and that's 4-part harmony. Quite a bit as well, so my vocal cords get a bit of a workout on that.
Oh, cool. So you're singing as well.
So yeah, I do a fair amount of singing as and when required.
Yeah.
It's it's doing what's necessary to fulfil the gig.
They sound like really interesting gigs.
Yeah, and
that it's saying about people who can who can still sing like they did. I think about a lot of the rock vocalists, and some of them just obviously having to sing songs in different keys and all this to do with the voices changing. But there are sort of notable exceptions, like Paul Rogers, who seems to be
just endless. Yeah,
exactly. But the one that really sticks in my mind is Aretha Franklin. That even just before she died, she could still sing incredible. Her range was unbelievable, and I just sort of think, well, whether those people are just lucky. That sounds a terrible thing to say. You know what I mean?
Well, I think a lot of it is to do with they've been doing it all the way through as well.
I think
because the vocal cords are muscles, aren't they? So it's as long as you keep working the muscles and
not overworking the muscles.
Yeah, but as long as you're using it right and keeping it sort of tuned, for want of a better phrase, keeping it toned.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of cases, a lot of these people who've got those sort of voices have sung right from the very beginning. In the case of somebody like Aretha Franklin, she would have been singing at a gospel church somewhere from the beginning. Yeah. So that's always been the case.
And the same with Stevie Wonder as well. I mean, he can still really get up to the
Yeah, it's fascinating. Cool. Well, I really enjoyed that. It's great to catch up with you.
Yes, no, you too, mate.
It's been such a long time, and I really, if people ever get a chance to see where you play or whatever. I mean, have you got a website or anything?
Do you know? I don't know. I'm very, very slow to kind of get along with that sort of thing. Mostly because so much of the work I do is as a sideman, really. Yeah. And I tend to prefer to be background. Not putting too fine a point on it. There's people listen with their eyes, and I realised very early on in the piece that I'm no front man.
Yeah, but
everybody
knows when you're there playing bass.
But yeah, I was going to say I certainly have a voice. People, I make my presence felt, but I'm not I'm not a front man, so I've never really done a huge amount of out front work and putting myself out there in that sort of, and even as far as composition and stuff as well, because I've always been an arranger rather than a composer. I suppose the best way to describe it is that my position and my job is to make other people sound good.
Yes,
very much so.
You do a good job. You do a good job, man. It's excellent. Well, thanks a lot. It's really cool.
Lovely, thank you.